everyone, I'm Bianca.
And I'm Rosina, and welcome to
Twins in Stitches. Today we have a crochet tutorial for you.
I'll be showing how to make this really nice granny square bag made of 8 granny squares and also has a lining. So perfect for everyday use or anything really.
It's a really super beginner friendly, easy tutorial.
So let's get started. So the first thing I'll be showing you is how to make a granny square. We're going to need 8 of these to put together, but first I'll be showing you how to make one. So to start our work, we need yarn. So we're going to need around 200 grams altogether, just for the squares. So I chose this nice burgundy colour, and you also need a crochet hook. This is a 4mm hook, but you must use the hook size that fits your yarn, and you can find this out by looking at the label on your yarn. So this tutorial is suitable for beginners. I do have a tutorial on how to crochet granny squares for absolute beginners. If you want to check that out, that will be in the description. But I think you should be able to follow along no matter what level you are at. So we have to start by making our slip knot. A slip knot is the knot that is our first stitch. How we do this is we put our yarn in front of our 4 fingers. We open we split the fingers, so 2 fingers here, 2 fingers here, and we wrap this around and through. We flip our fingers around. With our other hand's thumb and index finger, we go in, grab this yarn, in again, grab and pull up. So that is our slip knot, and this is the start of our work. We'll be making one of these for each granny square. So basically we're going to show you how to make 1 square, and then you'll repeat the 7 times to make 8 squares altogether. The first step in our square is to chain 4. So to chain 4, or to chain 1 even, we yarn over. Yarn over is this whoosh motion. So we yarn over. Okay? So to chain, we yarn over and we pull this through the current hoop on our hook. So we just go through, and that's 1 chain. We'll do that again. Yarn over, go down, and we put it through this hole and through, and 1 more time. Well, 2 more times. Yarn over, through, and I said we needed 4. This is 3, so we've got 1, 2, and 3. So then we do 1 more. 4. We need to close this to make a circle, so what we do is we slip stitch into our first stitch. Our first stitch is just this one here. We can see this V shape, so each stitch is a V. 1V, 2V, 3V, 4V. So all we do is we go ahead and put our hook into this V. Then what we do is we yarn over just like before, and we bring this through this first hoop only, okay? So go through the first hoop. Then we put this stitch under this one. So this is how we do a slip stitch. So we just go underneath. And that is our start done. Now what we do after we've done this is we chain 3. So remember to chain, we yarn over and put through our stitch. So that's 1, 2, 3. Then we need to go into the center stitch. So if we kind of break this apart, our center stitch is just this hole here. It's not this hole up here, it's the hole here, just here. We see this? We split it, and naturally there's a sort of hole that forms, which is here. Okay? So we are going to put 2 double crochets in this hole. In order to do a double crochet, we yarn over, just like before, and we have to go into the hole. So we yarn over and we go into our hole. So yarn over into our hole. So we have this formation. What we do is we yarn over and go through this first cluster, this first sort of mound of stitches. So we yarn over and go through that. And now we have 3 hoops left on our hook. We yarn over and go through just the first 2, so yarn over and we glide our hook so we can get it through the first 2 stitches. The first 2 loops. And then we yarn over and do that again to these 2. And now we have 1 double crochet. Let's do that again. We yarn over and go, now the hole is more obvious, so we yarn over, go in that hole. Right, we've got this formation, we yarn over, go through the first sort of cluster of stitches, yarn over the first 2, yarn over through the next 2. And that is our first group of 3. So how granny squares work is we do 3 double crochets between each. Now maybe you're observant and you realised we just did 2. Well, do we remember this chain 3? This chain 3 counts as 1. We only do this when we start a round, so on the first group of 3 of each round. So we chain 3, then do 2, and this counts as our 3 double crochets. Now we do this again, but we have to chain 2. So we chain 2 in between, so 1 and then 2. We chain 2 to create these gaps. So granny squares, they have gaps, obviously, these holes, which is what gives it its quite iconic look. So this counts as one of these gaps, this chain 2. Chain 2 is creating space. So then what we do is we yarn over and do 3 here. So we do the same thing. So we put 3 double crochets. So this is a next group of 3. So we've got 3 here, and then it's a square, so we need 4 corners. So we're going to do this 2 more times, and I'll meet you at the end. Now we need to slip stitch. We did a chain 2, and we have to do a slip stitch. So remember the slip stitch you did at the beginning when you put the chain together into a circle. So we're going to slip stitch into this top stitch right here. So we have a stitch here, then the next one. So just for top stitch. And what we do is you need to get both loops. So this is a V, we see. We need to get this V and this V. So what we do is we pretty much just force it for a little bit. Oops, we force it for a little bit. And then so that's one V collected. And then we do the same on the other side. Another V collected. So we see we have both the V's from the top stitch. On our hook, we yarn over through both of those. And then we yarn over and put this, we don't yarn over, sorry, we just go straight through. Remember, slip stitch, you only yarn over once. And this is our start. So we can see we've got these clusters of 3 with these chain 2 gaps in between. So here we are, we have our start. Now what we're going to do is we need to create our first corner. Now because this is a square, each of these is a corner. So all the work we'll be doing on this round is a corner piece. It is all a corner piece. So remember, to start like we did before, we're going to chain 3. That is the same for every single round. You chain 3 at the start of every round. So 1, 2, 3. Then we're going to go into this stitch through 2 times. So this is our first stitch we go into. And remember, we do 2 times because the first one already counts as a stitch. So we've got 2 double crochets in there and then the chain. So this counts as a cluster of 3. Now we are jumping from one to the next. Before we were chaining 2, but that's because we were at the corners. Now we chain 1. So to go between one and the next, so from this cluster to the next, we just chain 1. And we put 3 double crochets. There are our 3. And now because it's a corner, what we do is we chain 2. Okay, we chain 2. And we put 3 more in here. So each corner, apart from the first one, so the first one we're creating the first gap. So from now on, for each corner piece, we do 3 double crochets, we chain 2 and then 3 more. So it's all gone into that same gap. And then we continue the same thing. So we have gotten to our final corner. Now we already have 3 double crochets in here that we started with. So all we do is we put in 3 more. We have our 3 double crochets. And then we chain 2, like always for the corners, and we just slip stitch into that top stitch again. Yarn over 3, remember the slip stitch, and then just go through. And we continue this around, and that's pretty much the granny square. I will just note, so this is the next round. I did my start, chain 1, And now we're here. This is not a corner piece, obviously. These are our corners. So this one is very simple. All we do is we put 3 double crochets. So we have our 3 double crochets, we chain 1, and we go on to the next stitch. Okay, so I'm now happy with the size of my square. So all I do is I cut my yarn, and I just do as if I was doing a chain, but just bring it through perfectly and secure. And that's that. Alright, perfect. So now I have continued this and made it a big size. So mine actually have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rounds. So that's 7 rounds of my granny square. So mine are pretty big. You can do whatever size you fancy, really. We've got our 8 squares, so we are ready to put them together. But first, we must weave in some ends. So as we can see, obviously, we have these 2 yarns left. These we need to get rid of. We cannot just have them. But because, you know, they look messy, they don't look great. But we cannot cut them. If you cut them, right, you will basically ruin your work. This will come undone. So far, obviously, the work moves around, the stitches move. So if this moves, the thread will go through, so there's not an issue. But if we cut this short, then this is very likely to unravel. Same with this one. So we must weave in our ends. To weave in our ends, we need what is known as a tapestry needle. So this is like a normal needle, just with a bigger eye. We need a bigger eye because the yarn is quite thick. So what we do is we are going to thread our needle. So we have threaded our needle, and now we need to weave this in. So this is our centre, and all we're going to do is pretty much go into the stitches. So with our needle, we will just go in. So we have threaded put this through, and it comes out the other side. Okay, and then continue around. You don't have to do that much, to be honest. I think that's more than enough, but you can always do a bit more just to really secure it. Now we give it a good wiggle out. That's what I like to call it. And now we just cut. So it's now secure, and we now have extra yarn that's been threaded in. So we can now just cut it close to the work. And that is our woven inside. So now there is no yarn coming out the centre. And we do this with these pieces too, with the ones at the end. Exact same thing, and do this for all the squares. Yes, it is a bit time consuming, but it's necessary. Okay, so now I have weaved in the ends of all 8 squares, and I will be putting them together. So you get 2 squares and you put them wrong side facing. So this means that the right side is facing out, so the side you want to see. Now we are going to get a contrasting colour of yarn. You can do the same colour if you want, but I think putting a white would be quite nice, just to kind of change up the colour. So choose your colour. We are now going to make a slip knot with this yarn. So remember, put it around our top 2 fingers, pinch through and through. So we have our slip knot, and now we go into the corners. So the corner gap we're going to go into of one square, and the same corresponding corner gap of the other square, just like so. And then we are going to bring this slip stitch through. So we tighten it and we pull it through the gaps. So now we will be putting stitches into all of our stitches of our squares, and we'll be using single crochets. So this is a new stitch we haven't yet done. What we do is we go into our first stitch. So we see we've got this cluster of 3. This is first, this is second, and this is third. So we go into the third one, which is the first going the opposite way. We see we can just go in there. And now we do the corresponding on the other side, which is just this stitch here. So each stitch has basically a sister stitch, which you will be picking up as well. So that's one granny square and then the other granny square together. Yarn over, go through. Yarn over, through. Let's do that again. We do not yarn over, we go straight into our stitches. We yarn over through the 2 and then yarn over. So no yarn over before going in. When it comes to these bigger gaps, all we do is we simply insert our hook and yarn over and through. So we now have finished our row, so we've just gone through, which is looking really good. And now we are going to add 2 more squares. So we do the exact same thing, and we pretty much just continue. So would be like this, right? Folded. And we continue, and we add these. So what we now basically do is we again have the wrong sides facing. So the right side is facing out, and we go into the first corner piece, which is here and here. And we do a single crochet. Make sure to do this nice and taut so they're quite close. And then we continue with the first stitch. Okay, so I've done this and I have finished. So I've gone across both sets of squares. And now I'm going to go ahead and cut the yarn. So just a little snip. And we will make sure when you cut yarn, you always leave it long enough to weave in. And we just pull this through. Perfect. And now we're going to do the exact same thing going across here. So here we are, we have our front piece, and we're going to do exact same for the back. Now I'm going to be swapping to a hook that does not have a grip, just because I'm doing a form of crochet called Tunisian crochet for the strap, because this will be nice and a bit more secure. So we have set up our work. So we did a slip stitch and then I did 8 stitches. However many stitches you want to do is basically how thick you want your straps to be. Our first row will be a row of single crochets. So we don't work in this stitch. This is the stitch we are currently on, but we start here. So single, we just go through up and then yarn over 3. And now we flip and we start the Tunisian crochet. So what this involves is going into the front loop of a stitch. So this is our front loop, we see. We go in, we yarn over and go through. So this is almost like a single crochet, but it's not, because we don't go through again. We can then go to the next stitch and do this. So we essentially do not, I guess you could almost say, complete the stitch. And we do this for the whole row. So we're getting just the front loop. So this is our top loop. We've got 2 V's. VV, but you only take this first one. And we've got what, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and we need 7. And the last one is just the one at the end. So if we chained 8, but remember the first stitch will always be your turning chain. So for a sanity check, always make sure you've got 7 hoops. Loops, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Now what we do is we yarn over and go through the first 2 stitches. Yarn over the next 2. Yarn over the next 2. Yarn over the next 2. Next 2 and then final 2. So that's how it works. We go in, we put them on our hook, and then we yarn over them. If you don't have a hook without grip, say you only have this, you can still do it. You just have to kind of squish your stitches in here. Maybe you can't have that wide a strap. Alright, so we just continue this. So getting our hoops, we got here, because it's now a bit different. The stitches are still pretty well defined, to be honest. So again, we just take the first loop, so here, this loop here, and we yarn over there. Next one. So I have made my 2 straps. I'll just show one for now. This one they're both 65 centimeters long, thereabouts. Really depends if you want a taller tote bag, smaller, near your arm or not. But I'll be now adding these to my piece. So this is my piece, and we'll be adding the straps. So what we want to see is, this is going to be the top of our bag. We need to put this one end on the center of the first granny square, and the other end on the center of the other granny square. So we want these to be equidistant from the ends. Now obviously if you want them closer together or further, that's completely fine. I'll just be doing them pretty much slap bang in the middle of each square. I have threaded the tail end of one of the sides of a yarn. I'd recommend leaving your tail ends nice and long so you can just sew them straight away. And we are sewing this on the wrong side. So looking at our work, we place this just above the center, which seems to be just about there, and we simply sew this on. So we pretty much put my needle through, bring it through, and we're just going to go ahead and sew it. So we see we've got here. Now we're going to do our next stitch, making sure that this remains to be here. Okay. So our next stitch, so pretty much just poke it through. With sewing, crochet onto each other. It is a bit more of a free-for-all, I can't lie. But you just continue, poke it through the other end, and really get a nice, secure. So along the top, we're going to sew, and so on. So basically, we've just done this, and now we're doing here. So we're going to continue around, and then you can also do like a little X pattern too to make it nice and secure. So I have gone around the whole, so here's our rectangle, I've just gone around that, and now we see this is nice and secure. So we have our first panel, and our second one here, and they are practically identical, they both have the straps. And now we'll be putting these together. Quite honestly, this is exactly like the granny squares. We do a slip knot, pull it through, we chain one, and we do single crochets in all the stitches around. So we go down, around, and up. And then that's done, apart from one more step. But then that will be done in terms of putting it together with our crochet. So I have finished the bag, but now I'm going to be adding a lining. So this is the fabric I'm using for the lining. I have cut it to my size. And how I know this is I have used the bag as an outline. So I have tucked the handles, the straps, into the bag, and I've just placed it on top of my fabric, and I've just cut around it with quite a lot of space just for seam allowance and better to cut a bit big. So I cut the piece, but just to show how to make sure it fits, what we do is I've opened up the fabric, so this is only, it was folded over before. We then get our bag and put it on the corner, leaving space at the top for seam allowance, and we then fold this over. Now once we folded it, we can see that it perfectly, well, it covers the bag completely. It is quite big, but we'll cut this after. So now I'll be pinning the fabrics together to then sew. All I do is pop in a pin, on the outline, so just next to where the bag is, and I'll be sewing on the outskirt of this, so just on the edge. So I'll do this around the bag. On the bottom, there is no need to do this because this is already folded over. Okay, so I have pinned both sides, so the pins here and the pins here, and now I'm going to just sew across on the outer edge of these pins. I'll be using my machine, but you can also do it by hand if you prefer. And now I'll meet you back then. Quick note, do not sew the top. This will have to remain open so you can put things in your bag. Okay, so I finished on the machine, and now I'll be putting this into my bag. Now this is what I have, so we have to hem it. So we'll just go in once, in twice, perfect length. Pin this down. Oops, pin this down. Remove the lining. And then I'll do this to the rest and sew around on the machine. We want to sew right at the top of the lining and also right at the top of the bag. So we will go in. I have a needle with some burgundy thread, so just sewing thread, not crochet thread. Bring this through, and I'll just be sewing at the top. So we're going to go over and just at the top of this lining. We'll do that again, we'll go over to the next bit and just to the top of this lining. So we're basically doing mini loops across the whole work. Again, over at the top, over at the top. So we've got a nice neat edge on that, and we continue this all the way around. And I have finished, so I sewed in the lining. It looks great, it's nice, nothing's going to be falling out this bag. And here it is. So I really hope you enjoyed this project and that you made one yourself.
So now you know how to make a gorgeous crochet tote bag.
Yes, we really hope you enjoyed this tutorial. Let us know if you have any suggestions in the comments, and we'll see you soon.
Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Bye.
Bye.